look what I've done, look what I've accomplished, instead of saying, look what I'm ready for, look what I'm prepared to do in the future.
I promoted you to be a commander or a lieutenant. I don't need another sergeant out there.
They just pick it up and move it to a new desk or a new office or a new patrol car.
Every promotion, you move further from doing the job and deeper into leading the people that are doing the job.
You're listening to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast.
Here, law enforcement leaders gain practical tools to lead proactively in a reactive profession.
I'm Mike McIntosh, a retired sheriff and current division chief with nearly 4 decades in law enforcement leadership.
And I'm Cathy McIntosh, a business and branding strategist and longtime law enforcement wife. I focus on the human side of leadership, communication, identity, and the internal dynamics that impact performance and trust across an organization.
Together, we combine real-world command experience with clear, actionable leadership conversations.
So you can lead with intention, build stronger teams, and elevate your call to service.
Welcome back. I'm just going to start off with a question. So let's say that there's someone who's really, really good at their position. In fact, they are one of the best people in their current position. So does that mean that they're automatically ready for a promotion?
No, and honestly, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that we think about, or that we have, one of those misconceptions about promotional readiness. Being really good at your current job does not automatically mean that you're ready for the next one.
But obviously all the work that you've done and everything that you're doing in your current role is still important.
Absolutely. You don't leave any of that behind. Your experience, your judgment, the relationships that you've built, those leadership habits, all of that comes with you. But the expectations change, the responsibilities change, and how you use those skills as a leader, they are going to change. I've been involved in countless promotional processes, hiring processes, assessment centers, interviews throughout my career. And one of the things that I get to do now as an executive leader is I get to watch leaders operate day to day. And one of the things that I've seen is when a sergeant gets promoted into like a commander position, they still keep acting like the sergeant.
Or even if somebody promotes from deputy to sergeant, maybe they keep acting like a deputy and they want to be everybody's best friend still.
Yeah, and that's one of those areas that they get stuck in. With every promotion, you move further from doing the actual job and deeper into leading the people who are doing the job. You don't forget how the job is done. You just have to understand that your role in getting that job done is different now.
Good. So today we're talking about some of the signs that someone might not yet be ready for promotion. They might be killing it in their current job, but they're maybe just not quite there yet when it comes to putting in for the next role.
And I love the fact that you said the word yet. I think we really need to emphasize that. We're not saying that they're a bad leader, especially in their current role. We're not saying that they'll never be ready, but what we're talking about is recognizing the gaps before they get promoted instead of discovering them after.
And we're hoping that we can give people some things to start thinking about and start working on right now.
Exactly, because leadership readiness starts long before the promotional process ever opens.
So we've been talking about how somebody can be an outstanding employee or an excellent supervisor in their current role and still not be ready for promotion. So help me understand how that plays out in the workplace.
Right. I think that, a lot of times we have people approach us and tell us, you're going to be a great sergeant, or you're going to be a great commander. And they're basing that off of what we're currently doing in our current role. We get into that role, we develop a confidence. We've actually developed a great knowledge for that job. And so a lot of times folks think that just equates to you doing a good job at the next level. And while the fact that you have those attributes that will be beneficial at the next level, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready to go to the next level.
Some of what they're seeing are character traits. They see maybe that you're really great with people or that you've got a great way of communicating or explaining something to someone else. And those are all traits that you would want to carry forward, but it goes deeper than that.
Yeah, it goes a lot deeper than that. And they are. Every one of those traits is what makes you good at your current position.
Mm.
And we absolutely want those to carry forward. The problem begins is if you've not really understood, or if you don't really understand the role that you're going to, if you've not kind of done that homework, if you don't start to build that skill set for the next role, you're going to automatically revert back to your comfort level, your comfort zone, which was that last position that you held.
And there's a lot that changes when a deputy becomes a sergeant or a sergeant becomes a commander or a lieutenant. You don't leave your expertise behind. You don't leave your experience behind, but you use it then at a different level of responsibility.
Right. Yeah, I see that happen a lot. The thing that got you there, you want to carry into that next position. And it's very, very natural. I've done it. In a lot of the positions that I was promoted to, it was always kind of the fallback. Well, I was a good sergeant, and when I would run up against a struggle or something that I didn't necessarily know what my role would be as a lieutenant, then I would revert back to, but I do know how to be a sergeant. So I would revert back to what I did as a sergeant. And what we're seeing in promotional processes is that's the mindset that a lot of folks have when they go into those processes. They view it and they look at that their role as the role that they're currently in, not the role that they're aspiring to be in.
And why is that transition from doing the job that they're doing now to leading people who are at a higher level? Why is that transition so hard for some leaders?
Well, I think a lot of it is they just really don't understand the job that they're getting into. They see it from a distance, but they've never taken the time to really dig into what that role is. And they've never really kind of tried to put themselves in that commander's shoes, or whatever role that is that they're aspiring to be in. They've never put themselves in those shoes or in that mindset. They haven't gone through a, a process of being prepared for that next role.
In a lot of the promotional processes that you've been involved in, how is it that you can identify that somebody doesn't truly understand what they're trying to step into?
I'm taken back at times when we go through some of these promotional processes, and there's somebody sitting across from me that clearly cannot even describe what the role is that they're going into. So we'll ask them how they will apply a specific either scenario or a specific response to a given data set. And they answer it from the perspective that they're currently in and not from the perspective that they're going to be in, which tells me immediately that they really don't understand the role that they've applied.
Sounds like they're kind of entering that promotional process as putting their performance on display. It's almost like a performance evaluation in their mind. Look what I've done. Look what I've accomplished. Instead of saying, "Look what I'm ready for. Look what I'm prepared to do in the future."
And when I coach or I mentor people about promotional processes and what it is that they need to do to prepare themselves, kind of the situation that you just gave is a perfect example of that. What I want them to do is, yes, tell me about your experience, but how does your experience relate to what the job that you're seeking to be promoted into? So if you're a deputy sheriff, when have you as a deputy sheriff made decisions, acted in a place where they've had to do some supervision if they're going for a sergeant's position? I think often about the FTO or the PTO. if they've been in that role, they've had to supervise that deputy as they're going through their field training.
Mhm.
They've been in positions where they've had to make those types of decisions. They've had to look at the personnel decisions of that person that's sitting there with them. How is it that the jobs that you've done, the experience that you've had, how do you relate that to being a supervisor? And it's the same thing with sergeant. You've been a sergeant, but at what points in your time as a sergeant have you been afforded the opportunity to either act in the role as a lieutenant or a commander, depending upon your rank structure, or done things that would typically have been done by a lieutenant or a commander? It's relating the things that you've done and and how you can apply those to the role that you're aspiring to go into.
Somebody's pursuing a promotion. They're really thinking about it. They're going through or getting ready to go through a promotional process. What can they do to help themselves understand that next role before they step into the process?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that they can do is anything and everything they can to walk in the shoes of that role that they aspire to be in. And what I mean by that is find opportunities to partner with somebody that's in that position. And I, I would like to see them do more than just sit down and talk with them, but actually shadow them. I encourage sergeants that are wanting to go into a commander's position. Seek out some of the commanders within the organization, and if they're a commander in the jail, go to the jail and spend a couple of hours
Mm.
with them, walking with them, talking with them, figuring out what it is that they do in that role. And then go to investigations. What does the investigations commander do? What does the commander over special operations do? What does the commander of patrol do? Because when you start to move into those positions, into supervisory positions, especially in a sheriff's office, there's no telling where that vacancy is going to be
Mhm.
and what role you might have to play once you get promoted into that position. So it's really important to have perception and perspective from all of the different jobs and roles that a commander holds in an organization so that you can start preparing yourself to take on those roles. You're immediately going to know once you spend some time with them where your weaknesses fall and where your strengths fall and what it is that you're going to need to start working on to prepare yourself. I would also encourage them to go to their boss. So if we're talking about somebody that wants to be a commander, walk with commanders, talk with commanders, but also reach out to the division chiefs. Find out what keeps them up at night, what they do, the expectations that they have for that role of commander, and that way you can align all of that so you have a pretty good understanding of what the role of commander looks like in different positions throughout the organization so that you could better prepare yourself.
I can imagine, let's say a deputy's wanting to move into a sergeant's position. I can imagine some hesitation um, from the deputy thinking, if I start asking those questions, I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to look like I don't know. I'm going to look, it's a question that I should already know because I work with my sergeant every day. How do you shift your mindset to be someone who's just more eager to learn and ready to just glean from the upper level? And two-part question, what do they do if a sergeant does respond in a negative way? I'm sure that happens
I would imagine that it does happen, and if a sergeant responds that way, I would say shame on that sergeant.
for
Um,
sure.
we have to get to the point to where we understand that even the sergeants don't have the answer to every question. And I would imagine that a sergeant probably doesn't want to answer that question because they may not know the answer to
Mm,
it
mhm.
or the correct answer, right? They've been faking it until they make it kind of perspective. But what we want to do is seek out those people who are willing to have those conversations with us and really are not going to judge us. I mean, I can't judge a deputy for not understanding what the sergeant is doing, because that's not the deputy's responsibility. The deputy's responsibility is not to know what the sergeant is doing until they want to become that person. And you become that person. You get that position by asking those questions and making sure that you understand that you're going to be so much better prepared if you go through that process. You probably know in your organization those folks that develop people, those folks who have no problems sitting down with and having those conversations with folks who aspire to go into those roles. I think we're pretty fortunate in the agency that that I'm in. That I look at our division chiefs, and there's not a division chief in our organization that isn't willing to sit down and have a conversation with somebody that wants to be a sergeant, a commander, a division chief, and having those honest conversations with them and not judging the person because they don't know, they don't know what that role entails. That's how you find out, is asking those questions.
When they start meeting with sergeants and supervisors and people in the upper ranks above them, there's going to be some natural feedback that's shared with the person who's wanting to promote. How is their acceptance of that feedback viewed, and is that important? If they just rise up and become defensive, does that show maybe that they're not necessarily ready? I would want to caution people, be willing to accept that feedback and take it to heart. Take it. Feedback is a gift. Feedback is
Yeah.
always a gift. So take it like that and, own it and learn from it.
I've had people that have met with me, and I know that some of them have not really accepted the feedback that I've given them, almost like, well, that's not the way that I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it differently, which is fine. But kind of to your point, if you're going to meet with somebody and ask questions, listen to the feedback that they give. And then you get to decide whether or not you want to use that feedback, but you need to listen. And what I mean by that is the information that's coming, take that information serious. If you're going to go in and ask the questions, listen to what the responses are. Don't just blurt out, that you already know that, or that, you would never do that. Just kind of listen to the feedback that's coming.
Mhm.
Be somebody who can accept that feedback.
We've spent a lot of time today talking about not understanding the next role before you want to step into it. But I know there's a lot of other warning signs too that you see. Can you just, I mean, I feel like we could probably make a full episode out of each one of the warning signs, but can you give us a brief recap of some of those?
Yeah, when you're going to step into a promotion, we go through a process to become a deputy sheriff, right? But when we start going through processes to get promoted, now that person's going to be in charge of a unit, a team, some type of supervision. And we need to make sure as an executive team that we're hiring the right people. And those are people who don't avoid difficult conversations, who don't have to have that constant validation from the boss. And when I see people who consistently blame the current supervisor or the organization for things that are either happening to them or things that are not happening to them that they want, that's somebody who isn't taking responsibility, taking accountability for themselves. They're constantly putting the blame someplace
Mm,
else.
mhm,
Um, those folks that avoid those difficult conversations, those folks that react emotionally to feedback,
mhm.
those are all folks who really are not ready to take on that next role. One of the other big signs that I see is those folks that have a hard time building trust with other employees.
Mm.
we've got to have people in leadership positions that know how to build trust, and can be trusted. And when you're doing things that either are not trustworthy, or for some reason you just can't seem to build trust with anybody within the organization, there's a problem there, and that's somebody who is not ready.
Yeah, those are good. My mind's kind of bouncing all over the place. Let's start with the trust factor, and we're going to bring someone in, probably on our next episode, who's going to talk more about building trust in teams. I'm very excited about that
Yeah,
conversation. And then I wanted to circle back to, you said people might react with emotion to feedback, and I just want to separate this a little bit. I'm a very emotional person, and I feel all the feels all the time. And so I just want to clarify, it's not wrong to have emotion about feedback. What you're saying is the way that they react. They need to react without emotion, just as they would at a patrol call, or, they just can't let those emotions run away with them. So
yeah,
feedback can be very personal and it can spur some emotion. We just have to be able to quell how we react to that emotion that's stirring inside of us.
yeah. Especially in that law enforcement role,
Hmm.
it's so important for us to be able to control our emotion, to be able to have that emotional intelligence, to know how how to respond to something intelligently as opposed to emotionally. And that takes time. It's something that can be built into a person. But you have to, if you're going to get into supervision, you have to be one of those that does not react emotionally to feedback.
One of the other things that I've seen in both of our long careers is that there are people who are more concerned about having more authority instead of having more influence or more responsibility. And I would certainly see that as a warning sign that says, maybe you're not quite ready. If you're going after a promotion with the wrong motivation and the wrong intent, you might need to step back and check your heart before you move forward into that.
Yeah, if you're someone who, just wants the collar brass, or just wants the stripes on their sleeves, but really doesn't want to do the job, they
Hmm.
they just want people to see that they have rank, that's important to them. You're definitely getting into it for the wrong reasons. And some promotional processes are set up in such a way that those types of traits, those types of characteristics will start to bubble towards the top. And the good promotional processes will eliminate those folks until they're actually ready, in moving into that position for the
Yeah.
right reason.
Yeah. I know for sure that you've seen people who have promoted to a new position and have continued to act just as they did in their old position. They just keep doing the same thing exactly. They just pick it up and move it to a new desk or a new office or a new patrol car or a different login on a computer. What are the stakes of that? What's the problem? What bubbles up, as you say, to show that's not effective leadership?
I think what really starts to happen in those situations is you start to see people that weren't necessarily micromanagers become micromanagers
Mm,
because they don't know how to necessarily do the role that they were just promoted to, but they do know how to do the role that they are supervising. And so they end up turning all of their focus into the role that they were last in. And that causes them to be much more involved in that role than the role that they've been promoted into. And that's really a problem. I've made the comment before that, I promoted you to be a commander or a lieutenant. I don't need another sergeant out there. I need the watch commander. I need the lieutenant out there. Someone who can, see and take care of the entire county, not just the incident that's going on that the sergeant is taking care of. So, when you get promoted to that new position in that different role, you're having to allow others to do that job. And sometimes when you see that that job isn't being done as well as you would like it to be done, you start to control that and take that over, and that really starts to lead to that micromanager. And if you don't get a hold of that during that at that rank, the higher you go, the more that that's just going to continue. And, when you have chiefs that are micromanagers, that's miserable for everybody that works, underneath that chief. So it can be a problem. It's kind of natural when you first get into it. You make that first promotion, but most people work through that and start to operate within their role and not stay stuck in the other.
Promotion expands your responsibility and your perspective has to expand with it.
Absolutely. That's all part of that promotion, right? With every time you get promoted, your responsibility expands, and that higher level, being able to see more and the effects of the decisions that are being made. You're now seeing that, you're feeling that, you're a part of that, you're making some of those decisions. That has to expand as well.
Mm. If I were listening to this podcast episode and start realizing that maybe I just accepted a new promotion and I'm still operating at my old level, or you're stirring up some things in me that I really understand that I need to consider before I put into for the next promotional process. What is it that I should start doing now to make it better, easier, to make myself more successful?
So if you're currently in a position, and maybe you were recently promoted to that position, and you are not really understanding what that role is, then you need to go to your boss and have that candid conversation with them. And I got to tell you, that's one of the toughest conversations to have, because you're basically saying, I didn't know everything that I was getting myself into, and I don't really know how I should handle this particular situation. I can tell you that I've had employees that got promoted. I kinda help them through that process, but they'll have a monthly or a quarterly check-in with me and just say, "Hey, here's a couple of things I ran across, and, I was able to kinda get through it, but how would you have handled this?" Or, just an opportunity to kinda talk through some of those things, or that they're struggling with some personnel, and they're not afraid to say, "This is what I've tried. What else is out there?" There's a lot of growth that can happen in that, if they're vulnerable, if they're transparent, and just say, like all of us, I really don't know how to respond to that, and I could use your help.
Mm. I think vulnerability and transparency goes a long way.
They really do. I respect those that take the time to do that, and say, "Yeah, I struggle in this area. Can you help me?"
For that person who's maybe thinking, I'm doing really well in my current role, but I haven't really thought about what's needed for the next role, what would you say to that person?
Well, honestly, that's exactly why we're having this conversation. We're not trying to discourage people from promoting. In fact, I want to encourage people to promote. But what I really want to encourage people to do is to do that successfully, to understand that there are things that you can do and should be doing right now to set yourself up for success in the future. Being successful at your current level, that matters. The behaviors that you develop, those matter. Your judgment, your relationships, your ability to build trust, your reputation, your leadership habits, all of these things matter. But being ready for promotion also means understanding that responsibility, that role, that job, it's going to change. You can't become a lieutenant or a commander and keep operating as a sergeant. You can't become a commander and keep thinking only about your own team and your own assignment, because that role, that commander's role, is much bigger than that. With every promotion, you move further from doing the job and deeper into leading the people that are doing the job. And That's the important part is leading those people that are doing the job and leading them well.
Yeah. So every promotion makes you a little bit more hands off. You're just guiding people as opposed to actually doing the work. You're still working hard. I'm not saying that leaders don't work hard, but
Right.
it's a little less hands on. You're stepping out of the weeds and getting much bigger picture. So what challenge would you have for our listeners today that would help them prepare for the promotion before the promotional process is even announced?
Think about that next leadership role. Are 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 you preparing now? And if you're not, start. Have a conversation with someone who's already doing that job. But here's my caution. Don't just ask them how to be successful in the promotional process. It's more important that they're successful in the job that they're being promoted to. And I would say ask them what surprised them when they first took on the new role. Ask them what did they have to do differently when they stepped into that role? What was different about the decisions that they made? I like this one a lot. Ask them what they wish they'd
Yeah.
understood before they were promoted. And then most importantly, listen. Listen to the response. Don't Don't try to talk over it. Just listen to what they have to say. And then take an honest look at how you respond to feedback. We talked a lot about that today. If you don't handle feedback well, know that about yourself and set yourself up for success, knowing that some of the feedback that you might get might be difficult to hear. But if you know that going in, then you should be able to handle that well when you get it. Are you developing in your current role right now? Are you developing other people? Can you let go of the work and trust others to do it? If you can't do that as a sergeant, if you have to constantly lean into the deputy and do the deputy's work, you're not ready to go to the next step. You have to be in a position where you can let go of the work and trust others to do it. And then is your perspective what you're seeing, is it expanding upon the position that you hold today? And what I mean by that is if you're a sergeant, are you thinking about what the lieutenant's role would be in this particular position? Are you evaluating that? Are you considering that? You might not be able to do it in the moment because it's an active moment, but afterwards reflect on that and maybe even have a conversation with the lieutenant. That was a successful call. How did you know how to do, X, Y, and Z? Or what was your thought process through that so that you start to understand to think like that person in that next role?
Those questions are very helpful for our listeners. And one of the others that you asked or kind of mentioned earlier in the episode was what keeps you up at night? What kinds of things do you worry about when you get to your
Yeah,
level? And I think that's an important one too. But what we do know is that leadership readiness starts long before the promotion.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for another great conversation. We are excited to have you come back and listen in again to elevate your call to service.
If today's episode added value, don't let it end here.
Share it with someone on your command staff or leadership team, because strong leadership isn't built in isolation.
And if you're ready to develop or become proactive leaders inside your organization,
Leaders who communicate clearly and strengthen internal trust,
then visit leleaders.com to learn more about our coaching programs, workshops, and keynotes.
and if the podcast has been helpful, we'd appreciate your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Until next time, lead with clarity, lead with conviction, and elevate your call to service.